From the time I was 16 in 1976, and had my own vehicle, I would spend every bit of time I could find driving into the mountains or deserts of Utah to fish and hunt or just go camping. Most trips found my Irish setter gypsy riding shotgun. Most of the time I would drive up into the Uinta Mountains, or up to Strawberry Reservoir, where I had been going with family since I was born. The year 1976 proved to be a strange year, and in many ways shaped the roads I would take into the future of my life. My grandfather, whom I was very close to, died that year. It was the first time anyone had passed away in the family since I was born, and the loss was both mysterious and unsettling to me. I had heard that people died. They died on TV and in movies, and friends had told me of people dying in their family. But I could not conceive of the finality of actually losing someone I seen and talked to every day. Grandpa's death began what I called then the mountain years of my life. I spent a lot of time in the rugged Uinta Mountains alone with my dog, contemplating life, and of death. I had many questions and desperately wanted answers. If Grandpa could die, so could I, and my mom and dad and sister, and even my friends. Suffice it to say, I was innocent and naive in those years. Today, at age 63, my biological father, grandparents, and most of the rest of my family is passed on. Still, I have questions and no answers on life after death. 1976 was also the year I suddenly began seeing, or shall I say, experiencing, the enigmatic symbol of 1111, which would come to play an extremely significant role in the destiny of my life. 1976 is also the year I had a very strange but very real vision, or perhaps, a visitation, from something most people might call an alien. I had already seen UFOs by age 16, and while I was raised both Lutheran and Mormon at the same time, my concepts about what and who God was were beginning to take on new forms, which included the possibility that the UFOs were somehow connected to God and perhaps He Himself was an alien. After all, I had seen UFOs. I had not seen God, nor angels, nor, frankly, anything I had read about in the Bible. I was, however, beginning to read between the lines of the good book that my Sunday school teacher grandmother had insisted I memorize by age 10. I had nothing against learning the stories and still don't. I'm very sentimental to the tales of Noah and the flood, Moses and the Red Sea crossing, etc. But as my knowledge and horizons expanded, so did my interpretation of what a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night might have actually been. Much to my grandmother's dismay, I had already read such books as Chariots of the Gods, The Hollow Earth, The Antediluvian World, and books about the Devil's Triangle, and other mystery and phenomena around the world. So, with my childhood innocence becoming tarnished, and my faith in God faltering, and the death of someone I've known all my life, the year 1976 was a very vulnerable year for me. And, oh, did I mention that my girlfriend of 3 years had dumped me that same year for a senior? And that I had actually thought that Rocky Mountain High was something you got from breathing fresh mountain air? Okay, 1976 was a frickin' rough year. But I had a car. Christians might say it was a demon or the devil that appeared to me in my bedroom one night in October 1976 to drag what was left of my faithless carcass into the bowels of hell. Mary Rodwell might think it was something far from it. But one Saturday night late, while I was still very much awake and pondering the ironies of life, a strange being appeared at the end of my bed. Only the chest area upwards was visible, and it seemed that the rest of the body just faded out, as if the being had been projected into my room, rather than physically there. It looked directly at me, and I remember not feeling any sense of fear at all. Without moving its mouth, it simply said, "If you want to know more about us, come to Strawberry Peak." With that said, the being turned to his left, paused a moment, and faded. Suddenly, as if coming out of a trance, I felt anxious and excited about what I thought I just saw. As an aspiring artist, my first reaction was to get a paper and pencil and try to draw what I remember about him. The most prominent image in my head was that of when it turned away, showing its profile to me before fading. And that is what I drew. Although it was late, I got dressed and drove quickly to the house of my friend Robert, who had often been with me on long drives through the Strawberry and Uinta Mountains while engaged in deep philosophical conversation. Robert would come to witness many odd experiences in my life, and he was intimately familiar with the strange number 1111 that kept showing up in my life at coincidental moments. I woke up Robert by knocking on his bedroom window. I told him the story while his brain tried desperately to boot into safe mode. This wasn't the first time I had appeared like a bad dream in the wee hours outside his window to tell him of new revelations I had or to encourage him to get up and go cruising somewhere. As I told him about the strange vision, and what the being had said, I slipped the drawing through a slit in the fly screen for him to view. All he had to say about it was, "That's weird?" Nonetheless, we made plans to go to Strawberry Peak that very next weekend to see what was up there. Actually, I made the plans. Robert's sleep-deprived brain was still booting up. One weekend after another came and went, with each weekend making a promise to ourselves to go to the peak on the following weekend. To this day, some 40-something years later, we still haven't gone to Strawberry Peak. Each time the weekend came, we both chickened out. Frankly, I'm still chicken. Over these many years, I've often wondered what I would find there on Strawberry Peak. A portal? A spaceship? An underground entrance to the hollow earth? Honestly, I may never know. A few years ago I got a letter from Robert, whom I haven't seen in over a decade. Inside the envelope was a brief letter that simply said, "How about next weekend?" Carefully folded in the letter was an ancient and tattered and yellowed piece of paper, the very one I had drawn the alien's image on when we were both just 16. A lifetime flashed through my mind back to that very night. I had been married by now 3 times since then, had bought and owned at least 12 cars, finally lost my virginity and had children, and was at the time living 10,000 miles away on the other side of the planet. I've had one heart attack, and what hair I have left has gone mostly gray, while I've developed a nice healthy paunch around the middle that I'm quite proud of. I'm usually exhausted by the time I walk from my front door to my car, and I find myself dozing off in my chair while watching TV. Strawberry Peak is about 10,000 feet above sea level, where oxygen is in short supply, and to my knowledge there are still no roads leading to the top. Only rough, rocky deer trails. But, at any rate, I had written back to Robert. "Next weekend works for me.